Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel, and today is our 50th gun review on the channel. So to mark this occasion, we are going to be doing something spectacular. We have got a shootout between three iconic shotguns of their era. But it gets even better, because to do this we've got to head back in time to the 80s. So that's enough of that. We're going to turn down the cheeseometer now. That moustache is so uncomfortable. I know exactly how my dad feels. On a more serious note, we are here once again at the fabulous Oakedge Shooting Ground, and we are going to be putting three of the kingpins of the 1980s through their paces. We have got today a Winchester 5500 Sporter, this Beretta 682 Deluxe, and a Miroku 6000. We're going to shoot some clays with them, we're going to put them through their paces, and then at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you which is my top gun. So here we are at the first stand here at Oakedge Shooting Ground. We've got rid of all the 80s clobber, thank God, although I have kept hold of my retro skeet vest because I'm very attached to that. Like I said, we're going to put three guns, a Winchester, the Beretta and the Miroku through the paces. We're starting off on this one. We've got a little rabbit stand along with a zippy going away. So we'll kick off with the Beretta 682. Let's do some shooting. So we just had a few shots with the 682 on the stand behind me, which was the quite tasty rabbit and the little zippy going away orange. And I've chosen the 682 because for me, it is without doubt the gun that put Beretta on the map, certainly in the competition world. You know, it was launched early 1980s. This is about a 1986 gun, something like that. And from then on, it just created a huge following because in terms of the weight, it's got just the right amount of weight for sporting or for trap shooting. Now on this particular gun, this is the 682L. So rather than the plain silver action, the polished one, which is the original 682, you might remember we did a 682 Super Sport video, so do check that out. This was a deluxe version. So what we've got here, we've got the coin finished action with some partridges on one side, some ducks on the other. And we've got a woodcock on the bottom, really nicely done. We've got a gold crown on the top lever, another hint of quality there for you, adjustable trigger, standard 680 series tackle, and basically what that means is this gun is nearly 50 years old, but it just keeps going. You know, with regular care and maintenance, these guns are absolutely bulletproof. Like I've said in previous videos, you will go to a shooting ground and the chances are they will give you an old 686 or an old 682 to have a go at because they just work. Now, quite an interesting point I want to make with this particular gun is this was back in the day where Beretta went through a phase of almost painting the barrels before they moved on to some of the more modern bluing techniques. And because of that, you get this nice gloss shiny finish, but it actually looks like paint. You know, you get a little scratch here and there. You know, it just sort of shows up a bit more. Now, beaver tail forend, which obviously I like. We've got double point checkering with a little bit of a palm swell. Nicely figured wood, all original example. Standard Beretta sporting pad. Underneath, you can tell when these have got an original stock on because it's got the Beretta Trident logo in the pistol grip. Multi-choke, 29.5 inch with your standard sort of red strip foresight bead, and it's just a nice thing. It just feels quality when you pick it up. I do like modern Berettas. I like the 694, I like the DT11, but I think when you look at the sort of the 680 models, there's been a lot of changes over the years, the way that Beretta have manufactured things and their production processes, and I think when you pick up one of these original 682s, there's just something about them, they've just got soul. So now we're going to try the Miroku. So we've just shot the Miroku on the same stand as the Beretta. Now this particular gun is a Miroku 6000. Now the 6000 is a fixed choke model. This is 1988-89 again. Interestingly enough, these guns came with a 13mm rib. Like I said, they were fixed choke. The multi-choke version was the 7000. This particular gun is a gun that I do a little bit of coaching. It's a lone gun that I use, and it's bored to half and half because it's kind of no frills, half choke will kill anything. This has got chopper lump barrels, bog standard sort of Miroku engraving. Now this gun was launched back in 1982-83, I believe. Solid, reliable, durable Miroku quality. This gun, when you close it, it's got that really lovely little ting when it shuts the barrels, because like I said, you've got the one-piece barrel construction. Schnabel forend, which at the time sporters were pretty much all Schnabel forends. Yes, apart from the 682 we've just looked at, that did have a beaver tail. Reasonable size sort of pistol grip, probably a little bit too small for me. This gun, again, because I use it from a coaching point of view, has had an adjustable comb fitted in the kickies pad, but they're just so forgiving to shoot, Mirokus. You can give anybody one that's not shot any clays before and they'll just do okay with it, because they've got something about them that just makes them, like I say, very forgiving, very steady. You don't have to work them too hard. 6000 was the original model. It was superseded by the MK60, which they still manufacture today on the same mandrels. Yes, they're now putting multi-chokes in, but that's just because of the innovation and the requirement for steel shot. The only thing I would say is very, very low in the comb. Back in the 80s, most Mirokus were kind of 60, 62 mil drop. If you watch some of the videos I did on adjustable combs, you'll know that's a total waste of time for anybody. Obviously, we put an adjustable comb on this one. Another interesting point, we've also got the hallmark on the back strap that denotes quality. 2 3/4 inch chambers, because that's what you had back then. Like I said, 13 mil rib with a tram line. Today you'd get a 10 mil rib on a Miroku, but you've still got the foresight bead, and essentially they've not changed this design for a number of years. Weight just under 8 pounds. Absolutely fantastic bit of kit. There's hundreds of these guns out there. Just bear in mind that some of the very early ones may not be chrome lined, which just means they take a little bit more looking after. Anyway, that's that. Let's finish off on this stand with the Winchester 5500. So that's a Winchester. Like I said, this one is a 5500 Sporter, which was one of the last of the line here in the UK, built specifically for the UK market alongside the 5000, 6000, 6500. So this gun will be about 1986, 87, before the sort of the regime of classic doubles. This particular one is a 30-inch multi-choke Sporter. At the time, they did it in 28-inch fixed choke, 28-inch multi-choke, and the 30-inch multi is actually reasonably rare. We've got overboard barrels, 18.6, which at the time was mental because everything was being nominal bored. We've got an adjustable trigger with many positions. Again, something you wouldn't really get on most clay guns in the 1980s, particularly Mirokus. We've got an 11mm parallel rib with a tram line, which made it a bit narrower than the ribs you get on the likes of Mirokus and Brownings at the time. Ventilated barrels, which again, you didn't get on many clay guns. There was a lot going on with this gun. Aside from the fact, anything that came out of the Olin Cadentia factory, Winchester 101s, absolutely huge worldwide, regardless. This gun, sadly, like I said, was like the back end of the Winchesters, but I hold it in high regard. There's many people still shooting guns like this. They are a good bit of kit. This one, not got the original butt pattern, and I will say it does kick quite hard. I've just shot it, not a huge fan of that. We'll be changing the stock back when we get back to the gun room. Selective trigger, 2 3/4 inch chambers, overboard, like I said, but also massively magnum proof, the majority of Winchesters, because they came via America. Nice pistol grip, be nice with a palm swell, a little bit skinny for me, but again, it's kind of typical what you got in the 80s. But for me, the key thing with this gun is I just love the engraving. It was one of the first guns I saw and I thought, wow, that's impressive. You got the Winchester logo on the bottom, this lovely floral rose and scroll, double point checkering. I like the shape of the fore end as well. It's not quite a schnarl because we haven't got the lip on the front, and all round a very solid performer. So that's it for this stand. We're gonna get all 3 80s classic guns. We're gonna move on to another stand and we're gonna put them through the paces yet again and see how they perform, and then we'll do a comparison. So here we are, found another stand, got a nice going away and a nice high incomer sort of hanging in the sky to have a go at. Same as before, we're gonna shoot all 3 guns simultaneously in exactly the same order, starting with the Beretta. So we just shot the Beretta here on the second stand. Like I said, now we're going to talk a bit more about how good the gun performed in general. Really steady, easy to control, you know, that going away. If you've got a gun that's too light in the barrels, you could be miles ahead of it. It's got a reasonable comb height, although for me, it obviously could do with being a little bit higher. Nice feel in the pistol grip. Trigger pulls are really crisp considering this gun, like I said, is nearly 50 years old. I like the beaver tail for him because it feels like it gives me a bit more time, a bit more steadiness about the whole thing. Interesting to see what it'd be like in a longer barrel length, maybe a 32. I've not shot a 6.82 32 of this era from the 80s. Stock height, like I said, was good. Thickness felt good in the face, in the shoulder. Again, I'm quite susceptible to recoil. I will probably put a Kickies recoil pad on to give it a little bit more stock weight and also reduce that recoil again. On the whole, a very manageable, very forgiving, very steady gun. So let's try the Miroku. that's the second stand with the Miroku 6000. Different beast altogether to the Beretta. The weight's more between the hands. Still very steady, very controllable. I liked the fact that it was half choking both barrels because, you know, that high up one, it does want a little bit of choke despite the fact that it's kind of hanging there. Trigger pulls, probably not quite as good as the Beretta, a bit more agricultural, but that's what you kind of come to expect from the Browning Miroku stable. They just work, but they're probably not quite as refined as some of the triggers on perhaps Italian guns. In terms of the fit, like I said, a little bit slim in the grip, but the adjustable comb and the kickies, certainly from my point of view, aided me because of the fit was easier to achieve. The centre bead, because I'm left eye dominant, I do tend to find that does help a little bit. I did miss it a little bit on the Beretta, but overall, you know, a nice feeling gun. And like I said before, they are forgiving guns to shoot. They are quite easy to just give somebody and let them have a go. So, you know, all in all, positive experience. Let's try the Winchester. So there we go, there's the Winchester. Interestingly enough, a completely different animal on that stand to the other two guns. Much faster in the barrels, which, you know, is nicer for the going away. Not quite so good when you need a bit steadier on when you're going for that taller bird. Factory chokes, very impressive. Got 1/4 in this gun, but original wind chokes from the 1980s. Patterned really well, I thought. Trigger pulls, yeah, nice and steady. The only thing I would say is the recoil. So it kicks, but it's got this god-awful, dreadful pad on the back. But with the addition of a kickies pad or a different stock, this gun will be a real nice bit of kit to shoot. Very impressive. You can understand, or I can understand certainly, why they were so popular back in the day. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go and sit down somewhere nice and quiet, and we're going to summarise with all three guns how I felt about each one and how each one performed. And then I'm going to let you guys know which is my top gun of the 80s. Here we are, we've been out, we've shot all three guns in our 80s gear. We've got the Beretta, we've got the Miroku, we've got the Winchester. So what I want to do now is a little bit of analysis, talk through how I felt each gun shot, what sort of experience it gave me, how the guns handled, etc, etc. And then at the end of it, I will reveal to you, because I know you're all desperately sat there wanting to know, which my top gun of the 80s is. So, first of all, we started off with the Beretta 682, 29.5-inch multi-choke sporter. It's actually been a few years since I've shot one of these older style Berettas. I like the way it feels. I like the fact that it's heavy because I normally shoot a heavy gun. Like I said in the film, I really like the foresight bead on it. It's unusual to be ventilated barrels because a lot of sporters of this kind of period, particularly from Browning Miroku, weren't ventilated. But from a shooting point of view, just a bit steady, you know. I didn't quite feel that the weight lend itself to some of the faster stuff because sometimes you couldn't quite get the gun moving fast enough. Ultimately though, it was manoeuvrable enough to, you know, to have control over it, to slow it down when you needed to. I like the height of the comb. I like the dimensions full stop of the stock. I particularly like the pistol grip because you've got this kind of reasonably tight radius, a bit like a trap gun of the period. Felt it was a little bit kicky for a heavier gun, but on the whole, just steady Beretta, just, you know, just nice feeling, easy to move, and it just handled well. Trigger pulls were particularly good. I don't know if they've been played around with on this particular shotgun, but trigger pulls very good, not dissimilar to something like my DT11, so I was pleased with that also. So my top gun rating for the Beretta 682 Deluxe, despite the fact it looks fantastic, from a shooting point of view, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. So moving on to the Miroku, the 6000, which is the gun we shot second. 29-inch fixed choke sporter, half and half, and it just felt typically Japanese. It just felt solid, it felt steady, it was very easy to move, you know, very forgiving to shoot. Trigger pulls probably not as quite as good as the Beretta. Stock dimensions, obviously from my point of view, a huge aid having the adjustable comb, which wasn't factory because these were very low in the comb back in the day, 80s, late 80s into the early 1990s. Kickies pad again was nice for me because I'm quite susceptible to recoil, but on the whole, having the fixed choke barrels, a little bit of extra weight with that 13mm rib, just felt very solid, very dependable, and just a nice shooting experience. So I'm a huge Miroku fan. This isn't the best Miroku I've shot. I think the MK38 feels better, handles better, and performs better from my point of view. But on the whole, really good bit of kit. And like I said, you can pick these up for absolute pocket money these days, and they're a really good all-rounder. My top gun rating for the Miroku 6000 is 8 out of 10. And finally, moving on to the Winchester, which was the last gun in the test, our 80s classic shootout. Winchester 5500 Sporter, 30-inch multi-choke. Now, interestingly, this is the gun with the longest barrels in the test. It's half an inch longer than the Beretta, but interestingly, it didn't feel like a long gun. Lighter barrels, lighter gun overall, absolute joy to swing, no problem stopping it whatsoever once it got going, which you can have that sort of problem with a lighter gun with lighter barrels. Trigger pulls, probably not quite as good as the Beretta, but you know, good enough, not as agricultural as the Miroku felt. You know, nice and crisp. I like the fact it's adjustable, so should I want to shoot in a t-shirt today or a big jacket in the winter, I can move the adjustable trigger around. Yes, it kicked, but it's got a non-original recoil pad, which is horrendous. I like the ventilated barrels because the gun didn't get too hot very quickly. The chokes, Winchester factory chokes, performed faultlessly, 1/4.5. Now, one thing I will say, to make this a fair test and to make it as 80s as possible, apart from dressing up, of course, I've only used 28-gram cartridge today because back in the 80s, that's pretty much all you could get. You know, it was things like 80's or some of the, probably the very early Express, or I think going back there was various Rottweiler cartridges, Bakel cartridges, that kind of stuff that people will remember. I'm not old enough to because I was only born in 1980. But I only used 28-gram cartridges because I felt by using 21s or 24s, it wouldn't really be a fair test, even though that's what the majority of people will use these days on the market. So, although I thought, I'm a huge Miroku fan, that the Miroku will come out on top, I have got to give my Top Gun 1980s Classic Sporting Shootout Award to the Winchester because I had such fun shooting it. I never felt like I had to rush anything. I never felt undergunned, despite the fact that some of the targets were pretty stiff. And that, for me, is the absolute winner. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, it was close. These are all exceptional guns. But for me, on the day, it's got to be the Winnie. So that has been the Eastfield Gunroom 50th video special, the 50th gun review. We thought it fit in to mark the occasion with something a bit different. We've had an absolute riot filming this classic 80s shootout. Big thank you, before I forget, to the team here at Oakedge for letting us use this fantastic facility. If you haven't been shooting here, then please do come and have a go because it's a fantastic ground. If you've got any questions about any 80s guns or anything in particular shotgun related, please contact me directly. Don't forget to check out the website and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already clicked that subscribe button, then please do that. I know that people might be thinking, oh, you know, what about Nico, what about Browning? Personally, I'm deciding to leave them for the 70s shootout, which means yet another review, an even bigger moustache, probably some sideburns, and the loan of a 4 Cortina. In fact, I've had such a good time today, I might just pop back to the 80s for a bit.